The rain in Chicago didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker, turning the alleyway behind the veterinary clinic into a mirror reflecting the broken neon sign above. Inside, the air smelled of bleach, wet dog, and the metallic tang of old blood. Dr. Amara Vance leaned against the stainless steel counter, exhaustion settling deep in her bones like a chronic ache. It had been 3 years since the medical board stripped her license, 3 years since the scandal that framed her for negligence she didn't commit, and 3 years since she became the ghost doctor for the city's underworld. She wasn't saving lives anymore. She was preserving assets. A heavy pounding on the metal back door shattered the silence. Amara didn't flinch. She simply pushed off the counter, snapped on a pair of latex gloves, and unlocked the heavy bolts. The door swung open, bringing a gust of freezing wind and 3 soaking wet men in tailored suits that cost more than her rent for a year. 2 of them were supporting a third man between them, his expensive white shirt soaked through with a crimson stain that was spreading alarmingly fast. "Table," the man on the left barked. He was huge, a wall of muscle with a scar running through his eyebrow, but his eyes were wide with panic. "If he dies, you die. That's the deal." "Get him up here." Gently, Amara commanded, her voice steady. In this room she was God, regardless of who held the guns. They hoisted the injured man onto the metal table. As the harsh surgical lights flooded over him, Amara got her first good look at the patient. He was striking, terrifyingly so. Even pale from blood loss, his features were sharp, his jawline defined, and his jet-black hair plastered to his forehead by rain and sweat. A dragon tattoo curled up his neck, disappearing under the collar of his ruined shirt. This wasn't just a foot soldier. This was Jae-hwa Kim, the heir to the 7-Star Syndicate, the man the news vaguely referred to as the Untouchable. "Gunshot wound, lower left quadrant. Looks like a through-and-through, but he's losing volume fast," Amara muttered to herself, cutting away the shirt. "Everyone out. I can't work with you breathing down my neck." "We aren't leaving," the scarred man growled. "Then he bleeds out while we argue. Get out, or explain to his father why you let the heir die because you wanted to watch." The bodyguard hesitated, looked at Jae-hwa's unconscious face, and then signaled the other man. They retreated to the hallway, but Amara knew they were watching through the crack in the door. She went to work. Her hands, once celebrated as the steadiest in the state, moved with practiced efficiency. She clamped the bleeder, suctioned the cavity, and checked for organ damage. It was a clean shot, likely a sniper. It missed the kidney by millimeters. He was lucky, or perhaps cursed. As she prepared to suture the internal wound, a thought sparked in her mind, a dangerous, volatile thought. In the drawer of her instrument cart, hidden beneath a box of gauze, was a prototype microchip. It was a remnant from her old life, a piece of biotech she had been developing for patient monitoring before her career was torpedoed. It was supposed to track vitals, but she had tweaked it. It was a high-powered GPS tracker now. She looked at Jae-hwa's face. He was the most powerful man in the city's underbelly. If she had his location always, she would have leverage. She could sell the data to his rivals for a fortune, enough to buy a new identity and flee to a country without extradition. Or she could blackmail him directly. It was a ticket out of this hell. Her heart hammered against her ribs, loud enough that she feared the bodyguards might hear it. With a trembling hand, she reached into the drawer and palmed the chip. It was the size of a grain of rice. While she pretended to swab a deeper section of the wound, she slipped the device into the subcutaneous layer of tissue just beneath his lowest rib. It nestled there, invisible, undetectable without a scanner. "I own you now," she whispered silently, stitching the muscle over the device. She finished the procedure, closing the skin with neat, precise sutures. As she cleaned the blood from his torso, she felt a sudden grip on her wrist. It was ironclad, painful. She gasped and looked down. Jae-hwa's eyes were open. They were dark, endless, and devoid of the haze that usually accompanied anesthesia. He had woken up too fast. He stared at her, his gaze dropping to where her hand rested near his wound, then back up to her eyes. For a second, Amara stopped breathing. Did he feel it? Did he know? "Doctor," he rasped, his voice rough but devoid of weakness. "You have steady hands." I had to work quickly," Amara stammered, trying to pull her wrist back, but his grip tightened. "Who did this?" he asked, not referring to the surgery but the bullet. "I fix the holes, Mr. Kim. I don't ask who makes them. That's the rule." Jae-hwa studied her face, cataloging every microexpression. The intensity of his scrutiny made her skin prickle. He released her wrist slowly. "Good rule. Keep following it and you might survive the night." He sat up, wincing only slightly, ignoring the vertigo that should have floored him. The bodyguards rushed back in, helping him off the table. He stood unsteady for a moment, then straightened his jacket, buttoning it over the fresh bandages. He looked at Amara one last time, a strange curiosity in his eyes. He reached into his pocket and tossed a heavy gold coin onto the metal tray, right next to her bloody scalpel. "For your trouble," he said. They left as quickly as they had arrived, disappearing into the rainy night. Amara waited until the sound of their engine faded before she slumped against the wall, sliding down to the cold floor. She was shaking. She pulled out her tablet and activated the tracking program. A blinking red dot appeared on the map, moving south on the highway. "Got you," she exhaled, relief washing over her. She didn't know that the prototype she had stolen from her old lab wasn't just a GPS. She didn't know that the military contract her former hospital had been vying for involved kinetic bioresponse. The chip she had just sewn into the most dangerous man in the city wasn't just broadcasting his location. It was active, and it was linked to a dormant frequency designed to trigger localized combustion in specific proximity-based explosives. By activating the tracker on her tablet, she hadn't just armed a map, she had unknowingly armed the man. The next time that chip received a specific ping, or if the tracker was tampered with, the failsafe wouldn't just turn off, it would detonate. Amara Vance thought she had an insurance policy. Instead, she had just placed a trigger on a walking atom bomb. For 3 days, Amara became a ghost in her own life. She stopped opening the clinic, ignored the desperate knocks of low-level thugs needing stitches, and spent every waking hour in her cramped apartment above the vet practice, eyes glued to the tablet. The red dot was hypnotic. It moved with purposeful aggression, darting from the high-rise penthouses of the Loop to the gritty, industrial warehouses near the docks. Jae-hwa Kim was not resting. He was hunting. And thanks to the stolen tech nestled between his ribs, Amara was the only person in Chicago who knew exactly where the predator was stalking. Her plan was simple, born of desperation and the crushing weight of her student loans and legal fees. She didn't want to destroy him. She just wanted enough money to disappear to a beach in non-extradition territory where no one cared about her revoked license. She typed out the message on a burner phone, her thumbs hovering over the keys. "I know where you are. I know where you sleep. 5 million in Monero or the Italians get your live location. You have 24 hours. She hit send, directing it to the encrypted number the 7 stars used for public relations. The response didn't come via text. It came 4 hours later, in the dead of night, as the sound of breaking glass downstairs shattered her uneasy sleep. Amara rolled out of bed, grabbing the tablet and her taser. She could hear the heavy, muffled footsteps of men who knew how to move quietly but didn't care to. They were already in the clinic. She scrambled toward the fire escape window, but before she could slide the sash up, the lock on her apartment door disintegrated with a deafening crack. 3 men stormed in. They weren't the panicked bodyguards from the other night. These were professionals, dressed in tactical gear. But the man who walked in behind them, stepping over the splintered wood of her door frame with the casual elegance of a king entering his court, was Jae-hwa. He looked impeccable. The gray bespoke suit fit him perfectly, hiding the bandages she knew were wrapped around his torso, but his face was a mask of cold fury. He didn't look like a man being blackmailed. He looked like an executioner. "You have a lot of nerve, doctor," he said, his voice low and smooth, like velvet dragged over gravel. Amara backed up until her legs hit the edge of her bed. She held the tablet up like a shield. "Stay back. I'll send your location to every rival family in the city. The Russians, the Triads, they'll all descend on this building in 10 minutes." Jae-hwa signaled his men. They holstered their weapons and stepped back into the hallway, leaving the two of them alone in the dim room lit only by the street lamps outside. He walked toward her slowly, unbothered by her threat. "You think I fear them?" He stopped inches from her. She could smell his expensive cologne mixed with the faint, sharp scent of antiseptic. He towered over her, his dark eyes boring into hers. "You saved my life, Amara. I was going to send you flowers, maybe a new car, but then you decided to put a leash on me." "It's an insurance policy." Amara's voice wavered, but she held his gaze. "I needed to know you wouldn't kill me to tie up loose ends." "And the blackmail? Severance pay?" Jae-hwa chuckled, a dark, humorless sound. He reached out, his hand lightening fast, and snatched the taser from her grip, tossing it aside as if it were a toy. Then he grabbed her wrist, the one holding the tablet. He didn't take it from her. Instead, he pulled her hand toward his chest, pressing her palm flat against the left side of his suit jacket, right over the spot where she had operated. "Do it," he challenged. "Send the location, see what happens." Amara's heart pounded against her ribs. His heart was beating beneath her hand, strong and rhythmic. But there was something else. Beneath the fabric and the bandage, the skin felt unnaturally warm, feverish. "I'm not bluffing," she warned, tapping the screen with her free hand. She initiated a active ping, a feature of the chip meant to give real-time, high-frequency updates. The moment she pressed the button, Jae-hwa flinched. His breath hitched, and his grip on her wrist tightened to the point of bruising. A bead of sweat instantly broke out on his forehead. He groaned, a sound torn from his throat, and stumbled back, clutching his chest. What did you do?" he gritted out, his knees buckling. The invincible mafia boss dropped to one knee, gasping for air. Amara stared at the tablet. The screen was flashing red. "Warning, kinetic cell activated. Thermal output increasing." I just pinged it," Amara stammered, horror dawning on her. "It's just a GPS. It's supposed to just send coordinates." Jae-hwa ripped his jacket open, buttons flying across the room. He tore at his shirt, revealing the fresh dressing. Through the gauze, a faint, rhythmic orange glow was pulsing from beneath his skin. The heat coming off him was intense, radiating in waves. "It burns," he snarled, his eyes squeezing shut. Get it out now." Amara dropped to her knees beside him, her mind racing. She looked at the tablet again. The specs for the prototype she had stolen scrolled across the screen. She had never read the full military manifest. She read it now. Project Acheron, subcutaneous asset denial system, remote detonation capability, tamper-proof, heat signature activation. It wasn't just a tracker. It was a kill switch. A walking bomb designed for covert agents, meant to incinerate them if they were captured or compromised. And by pinging it repeatedly to get a better signal, she had jump-started the arming sequence. "I can't take it out," she whispered, terror making her voice shrill. "If I cut the skin now, the exposure to air while it's in this state, it'll trigger the thermal reaction instantly. You'll incinerate from the inside out." Jae-hwa looked up at her, pain and rage warring in his eyes. He grabbed her collar, pulling her face close to his. "You put a bomb in me." "I didn't know. I swear I didn't know." Suddenly, the glass of her bedroom window exploded inward. Gunfire raked the ceiling, plaster raining down on them. Jae-hwa reacted on instinct, tackling Amara and rolling them both behind the heavy oak dresser. "My men?" Amara asked, covering her head. "Dead," Jae-hwa grimaced, clutching his burning chest. "That wasn't my team. That was a hit squad." "The Russians. They must have been tracking the same frequency, or perhaps they had intercepted her clumsy digital threats. They weren't here to pay for the location. They were here to eliminate the competition while he was weak. "We have to move," Jae-hwa rasped, pulling a sleek black pistol from his ankle holster. He checked the magazine, then looked at Amara. The heat radiating from his chest was making the air between them shimmer. "Can you stop this thing?" "I need time. I need to hack the software, bypass the failsafe." "Then you're coming with me," he commanded. He grabbed her hand, his palm searing hot. "If I blow up, Doctor, I'm taking you to hell with me." He kicked the bedroom door open and dragged her into the hallway, firing 3 shots blindly into the darkness of the stairwell. A body thudded down the steps. The romantic notion of a savior was gone. Amara was now tethered to a ticking time bomb of a man, running for her life through a hail of bullets, with no idea how to defuse the catastrophe she had sown into his flesh. The alleyway was a canyon of shadows and muzzle flashes. Rain hissed against the pavement, mixing with the steam rising off Jae-hwa's body. He moved with a terrifying grace for a dying man, shoving Amara behind the bulk of a dumpster as bullets chipped away the brickwork above their heads. He returned fire, his movements precise, calculated, wasting no ammunition. 2 shadows at the end of the alley dropped, but the wail of sirens was cutting through the night, getting closer. It wasn't the police. In this part of Chicago, the sirens usually meant the cleanup crews for the syndicates were closing in. "The car," Jae-hwa gritted out, holstering his weapon and gripping his chest. His skin was gray, clammy with sweat, yet when Amara grabbed his arm to support him, the heat radiating through his suit jacket burned her fingers. "Black sedan, 2 blocks east. Go." They ran. Amara's lungs burned, her sneakers splashing through puddles that looked like oil slicks. She could hear Jae-hwa's ragged breathing beside her. The device inside him was effectively cooking his internal organs, raising his core temperature to critical levels. Every step he took was an act of sheer will. They reached the sedan, an unobtrusive armored luxury car parked beneath an L-train overpass. Jae-hwa fumbled with the keys, his hands shaking so violently he dropped them. Amara snatched them up, unlocked the door, and shoved him into the passenger seat. "I'm driving," she ordered, sliding behind the wheel. She didn't wait for an argument. She slammed the car into gear and peeled out just as a black SUV screeched around the corner, its windows rolling down to reveal the barrels of automatic rifles. Amara drove like a woman possessed, weaving through traffic, running red lights, her eyes darting between the rearview mirror and Jae-hwa. He was slumped against the window, clutching the dashboard. A soft, eerie orange light was now visible through the fabric of his shirt, pulsing in time with his erratic heartbeat. "The tablet," Jae-hwa gasped, pointing to where she had thrown it on the backseat. "Check the signal." Amara risked a glance. The screen was a chaotic mess of data. "It's bad. The signal isn't just pinging me anymore. When I activated the active tracking, it broke the encryption. It's broadcasting on an open frequency. Anyone with a police scanner or a signal interceptor can see you." "I'm a walking lighthouse," he muttered, a dark, pained smile twisting his lips. "You really know how to ruin a man's night, Doctor." "I need to cool you down," she said, her voice tight with panic. "The reaction is thermal. If we lower your body temperature, we might be able to slow the arming sequence before it hits detonation threshold." "There's a safe house," he whispered, his eyes fluttering shut. "Industrial district, an old meatpacking plant. It has freezers." The drive took 20 agonizing minutes. Amara watched the temperature gauge on the tablet climb higher. 102 degrees, 104. He was entering heatstroke territory, and the bomb hadn't even gone off yet. When they finally skidded into the loading bay of the abandoned plant, Jae-hwa was barely conscious. Amara hauled him out of the car, his weight crushing her, and dragged him toward the heavy steel doors. She used the key fob he weakly pressed into her hand to unlock the electronic keypad. Inside, the air was frigid, smelling of stale ice and iron. She didn't stop in the main floor. She dragged him straight into one of the walk-in freezers that was still humming, kept active for storage he likely used for things other than meat. She kicked the door shut, sealing them in the Sub-Zero room. She ripped his ruined jacket off, then his shirt. The sight made her gasp. The skin around the incision she had made days ago was angry and red, but the center of it was glowing with a terrifying, molten luminescence. The chip was visible beneath the skin, a burning ember threatening to consume him. "Ice," she commanded, grabbing bags of crushed ice from a bin in the corner. She shoved him onto a metal crate and pressed the bags directly against his bare chest, right over the device. Jae-hwa hissed, his back arching off the crate. The collision of the freezing ice and his superheated skin created a cloud of steam that instantly filled the small space. "Christ!" "Hold still," Amara yelled, leaning her body weight against him to keep the ice in place. "Unless you want to explode, you take the pain." For a long time, the only sound was their heavy breathing and the hum of the freezer units. Slowly, the orange glow beneath his skin began to dim. The frantic pulsing slowed. The tablet, which she had propped up on a shelf, showed the thermal output stabilizing. It wasn't fixed, but the countdown had paused. Jae-hwa slumped back against the metal wall, shivering now, his skin beaded with water and sweat. He looked up at her, his dark hair falling into his eyes. In the harsh fluorescent light of the freezer, stripped of his expensive suit and his aura of invincibility, he looked raw, dangerous but human. "You have terrible bedside manner," he murmured, his teeth beginning to chatter. "I usually treat dogs," Amara retorted, though her hands were trembling as she adjusted the ice packs. "They bite less." He reached out, his hand freezing cold now, and wrapped his fingers around her wrist. He didn't squeeze this time, he just held her. The contact sent a jolt of electricity through her that had nothing to do with the device. "Why?" he asked, his voice low. "You could have run. You could have left me in the alley to die. The Russians would have finished me and your problem would be solved." Amara looked down at where her hand rested on his chest, inches from the death she had planted there. "I'm a doctor, Jae-hwa, even a discredited one. I took an oath to do no harm. I broke that oath when I put that thing inside you. If I let you die because of it, I'm not just a criminal. I'm a monster." "We are all monsters, Amara," he said softly, using her name for the first time. The sound of it on his tongue was intimate, heavy. "Some of us just dress better." He sat up, wincing, the ice pack sliding down to his lap. The glow was faint now, a dull red ember. He looked at the tablet. "This is a temporary fix. We can't stay in a freezer forever. And the moment I step out or the moment my body regulates its temperature, the cycle starts again. How do we kill it?" Amara ran her hands through her hair, packing the small space to keep warm. "I can't surgically remove it. The tamper mechanism detects air exposure and pressure changes. It'll blow. The only way to deactivate the kill switch is through the software." "You said you hacked it." "I hacked the GPS function. I didn't touch the core kernel. To shut down the arming sequence, I need the original encryption key, the master code." "Where is it?" Amara stopped packing. She looked at him, fear replacing the adrenaline in her eyes. "It's on the physical servers of the lab I stole it from. The Chaotic Dynamics Division at Vance Holloway Medical." Jae-hwa let out a dry laugh. "Vance Holloway, the fortress downtown, the one with private military security." "Yes," Amara whispered. "That's why I was fired. I was asking too many questions about what they were building. If we want to save your life, we have to break into the most secure biotech facility in the city. And we have to do it while every hitman in Chicago is hunting us." Jae-hwa stood up. He was shivering violently from the cold, but his eyes were burning with a renewed, cold fire. He picked up his ruined shirt and draped it over his shoulders, then looked at Amara. "Well then, doctor," he said, extending a hand to her. "It seems we have a heist to plan. Get me out of this freezer before I freeze to death, and let's go break into your old office." Amara took his hand. It was a pact signed in ice and blood. She realized then that she wasn't just his hostage anymore, and he wasn't just her victim. They were partners. And as she looked into his eyes, she realized with a terrifying jolt that she didn't want him to die, and not just because of the guilt. She wanted him to live. The transition from the meat locker to the humid Chicago night was a physical shock. Amara had fashioned a crude cooling vest for YHWA using vacuum-sealed bags of crushed ice, taped tightly against his torso beneath a stolen worker's jumpsuit found in the plant's locker room. It was a temporary solution, a melting hourglass strapped to his chest. Every drip of condensation was a reminder that the bomb was waking up again. "We need a car that doesn't scream Mafia hit," Amara said, scanning the desolate industrial lot. "My people keep a stash vehicle 3 blocks from here, an Accord, boring, reliable," YHWA gritted out. He was moving stiffer now, the cold from the ice pack seeping into his muscles, battling the feverish heat radiating from his core. He looked at her, his dark eyes sharp despite the pain. "You lead. I follow. This is your house we are breaking into." The drive to the Vance Holloway Medical Research Facility took them out of the shadows and into the gleaming, sanitized wealth of the Loop. The building was a glass needle piercing the sky, a fortress of biotech secrets. Amara parked the nondescript Honda in a delivery bay shadow, her heart hammering against her ribs like a trapped bird. She wasn't a thief. She wasn't a soldier. She was a doctor who had made one terrible mistake, and now she was about to commit a felony to fix it. "The main lobby is a fortress," Amara whispered, looking up at the cameras scanning the perimeter. "Retinal scanners, metal detectors. We can't go in the front." "Then we go under," YHWA said, checking the magazine of his pistol. He had 1 clip left. "Every castle has a sewer." "Not a sewer, bio-waste disposal." Amara pointed to a heavy, reinforced loading dock. "The automated trucks come out at 3:00 a.m. That's in 10 minutes. When the doors open, we slip inside the airlock before the decontamination cycle starts." "Decontamination?" YHWA raised an eyebrow. "Chemical mist, don't breathe it." They waited in the tense silence of the car. The proximity was suffocating. Amara could feel the heat coming off him again. The ice was melting too fast. She reached out, instinctively checking his pulse at his neck. His skin was burning. He didn't pull away. Instead, he leaned into her touch slightly, a moment of vulnerability that felt louder than a scream. "If we don't make it," YHWA said softly, "I want you to know. I would have paid the blackmail. I wouldn't have killed you." Amara looked at him, surprised. "Why?" "Because you were the first person in 10 years to look at me and see a patient, not a paycheck or a target." He caught her hand, his thumb brushing her knuckles. "And because you have very beautiful eyes when you are terrified." The loading dock gears ground into motion, cutting the moment short. "Let's go," Amara breathed. They sprinted across the tarmac as the massive steel doors hissed open. A robotic drone truck rolled out, and in the gap before the doors began to close, they slipped through, rolling onto the cold concrete of the airlock. The inner doors sealed with a thud. Immediately, warning lights flashed amber. Decontamination cycle initiating. "Masks," Amara yelled, pulling her shirt up over her nose and mouth. YHWA did the same. Jets of white chemical mist hissed from the ceiling, obscuring everything. They blindly scrambled for the inner service hatch. Amara's fingers fumbled with the keypad. The code was the same one she used 3 years ago, 1138, a green light. The hatch popped open and they tumbled into a sterile white hallway, coughing and gasping for clean air. "We're in," Amara wheezed. "Sub-level 4. The server farm is on level 20. We need the service elevator." They moved through the silent corridors like ghosts. The building was asleep, but it wasn't empty. Amara knew the night shift patrol patterns. She used to share coffee with the guards. Now she was evading them. They reached the elevator, and Amara hacked the panel to bypass the ID check. As the car ascended, the silence stretched thin. Suddenly, Jae-hwa groaned, doubling over. The ice bags were water now. The red light on Amara's tablet, which she had tethered to her belt, began to strobe. Critical temperature threshold approaching. ARMING sequence, 85%. "We're running out of time," she said, her voice rising in panic. She ripped the wet tape off his chest. The glow was back, brighter than before, illuminating the elevator car with a sinister pumpkin orange light. "We need to get to the cooling fluid in the server room. I can hook you up to the liquid nitrogen exchange." "Just get the code," Jae-hwa gasped, sweat dripping from his nose. The elevator dinged at level 20. The doors opened and they froze. Standing at the end of the long glass corridor, right in front of the server room doors, were two men. They weren't Vance Holloway security. They wore heavy trench coats and carried suppressed submachine guns. The Russians. They had tracked the signal here. "Down!" Jae-hwa shoved Amara back into the elevator just as the glass walls shattered under a hail of bullets. He returned fire, his hand steady despite the tremors racking his body. He took one down with a shot to the knee, then the throat. The second man scrambled for cover behind a reception desk. "They're here," Jae-hwa snarled, pressing the open button to keep the doors from closing and trapping them. "Go, run to the server room. I'll hold them off." "No, you can't fight like this." "I am a bomb, Amara. Let me be useful." He looked at her, his eyes blazing with a mix of fever and ferocity. "Get the code, save us both. Go." He broke cover, firing wildly to suppress the remaining gunmen, drawing the fire away from her path. Amara didn't waste his sacrifice. She sprinted down the hallway, glass crunching under her sneakers, diving into the server room just as bullets sparked against the doorframe. She slammed the heavy server door and locked it. The room was a humming forest of black towers and blinking blue lights. The air was frigid, cooled by a massive liquid nitrogen system. She scanned the room and found the main terminal. Her fingers flew across the keyboard. Access denied. Come on," she sobbed, bypassing the firewall with a backdoor script she had written years ago for diagnostic tests. Access granted. She navigated to the Project Acheron directory. The files were there. Kill switch disarm protocols. She clicked to open the file. Enter master encryption key. She froze. She didn't have the key. That's what she came here to find. She frantically searched the directories. The key wasn't in the digital files, it was hardware locked. Through the thick glass of the server room window, she saw Jae-hwa out in the hallway. He was out of ammo. He had tackled the remaining Russian assassin and they were grappling on the floor. Jae-hwa was losing. He was weak, burning up. The assassin had a knife, driving it down toward Jae-hwa's throat. Amara looked around wildly. She saw the central cooling unit, a tank of liquid nitrogen with a manual release valve. Then she saw the physical hard drive bay labeled Acheron. The key was a physical drive. She had a choice: run out and help him or get the drive. She grabbed a heavy fire extinguisher from the wall. She didn't run to the computer. She unlocked the door and ran back into the hallway. The assassin was on top of Jae-hwa, the knife inches from his jugular. Amara didn't hesitate. She swung the extinguisher with all her strength, bringing it down on the assassin's head with a sickening crack. He went limp, rolling off Jae-hwa. Jae-hwa lay there, gasping, blood on his face. Did you get it?" "Not yet," Amara panted, helping him up. "It's hardware. We have to pull the drive physically." She dragged him into the server room. The ambient temperature was helping, slowing the reaction slightly, but the orange light in his chest was now pulsing rapidly, a strobe light of imminent death. Amara ran to the main server tower. She found the slot, a black box with a red handle. She yanked it out. "I have it." She plugged the drive into her tablet. The screen flashed green, decryption complete, ready to broadcast disarm signal. "Do it," Jae-hwa whispered. leaning against the server rack, sliding down to the floor. Amara hit execute. A progress bar appeared, uploading firmware patch, 10%, 20%. Suddenly, the building's PA system crackled to life. A calm, synthetic voice echoed through the room. Security breach detected in Sector 4. Lockdown initiated. Purge protocols activated. Oxygen removal in 30 seconds. Amara looked at the vents. The air hiss changed pitch. They weren't just locking the doors. They were sucking the air out of the room to extinguish a fire or intruders. "The upload is too slow," Amara cried, watching the bar crawl. 35%. If we lose consciousness before it finishes, the signal cuts and you detonate. Jae-hwa looked at the door. Through the glass, more figures were appearing at the end of the hallway. Not Russians this time. Heavily armored men with Vance Halloway insignias, the corporate cleaners. "Amara," Jae-hwa said, his voice surprisingly calm. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the gold coin he had given her that first night. He pressed it into her hand. "There is a vent behind the cooling unit. It leads to the roof. You can fit. I am not leaving you. The upload needs proximity to finish. I will stay here with the tablet. You go. If they breach the door, they will shoot first. You have to survive." "No," Amara grabbed his face, forcing him to look at her. "We finish this together. Look at me. Breathe." The air was getting thin. Her head started to swim. The progress bar hit 60%. The soldiers outside were setting explosive charges on the server room door. "It's been a hell of a date, Doctor." Jae-hwa smiled weakly, his eyes closing. "Stay with me, Jae-hwa," Amara screamed, slapping his cheek lightly. "Don't you dare die on me now." Boom! The door to the server room blew inward, sending a cloud of smoke and debris flying. The soldiers swarmed in, laser sights cutting through the haze. Amara shielded Jae-hwa's body with her own, clutching the tablet as the progress bar ticked to 98%. A soldier stepped forward, raising his rifle, dropped the device. Amara looked at the screen, 99%. She looked the soldier in the eye and held the tablet tighter. "Go to hell." 100%. Disarm successful. The orange glow in Jae-hwa's chest instantly vanished, plunging the room into the cool blue light of the servers. But the rifles were still aimed at their heads. The silence in the server room was more deafening than the explosion that had breached the door. Smoke swirled around the tactical lights of the corporate soldiers, creating a haze of gray and blue. Amara stood frozen, her chest heaving, the tablet clutched to her chest like a holy relic. The orange deathglow inside Jae-hwa was gone, extinguished by the code she had uploaded, but the barrels of 6 automatic rifles remained fixed on their center of mass. "On your knees," the lead soldier barked, his voice distorted by a gas mask. "Hands behind your heads." Jae-hwa shifted. He was weak, his skin pale and slick with the sweat of a fever that was just beginning to break, but he straightened his spine. Even unarmed, battered, and wearing a dirty worker's jumpsuit, he radiated an authority that made the air feel heavy. He didn't kneel. He stepped in front of Amara. "I am Jae-hwa Kim," he said, his voice raspy but calm. "And you are making a very expensive mistake." "Target identified," the soldier said into his comms. "Secure the asset, eliminate the witness." The soldier raised his rifle toward Amara. Amara flinched, bracing for the impact, but it never came. Instead, the hallway behind the soldiers erupted in a cacophony of gunfire. It wasn't the precise, controlled bursts of the corporate mercenaries. It was the thunderous, overwhelming roar of heavy-caliber street weapons. The soldiers spun around, caught in a pincer movement. Through the shattered remains of the door, a wall of men in dark suits surged forward. Leading them was the massive, scarred bodyguard from the veterinary clinic, D-Sung. He moved like a battering ram, ignoring cover, dual-wielding pistols with terrifying efficiency. The Vance Halloway mercenaries, trained for stealth and corporate extraction, were unprepared for the sheer brutality of the Seven Stars Syndicate. The firefight was visceral and short. In less than 20 seconds, the corporate team was on the floor, neutralized. D-Sung stepped over the debris, his suit pristine despite the chaos. He holstered his weapons and bowed low to Jae-hwa. "Boss, we tracked the car. My apologies for the delay. The traffic in the loop is terrible." Jae-hwa let out a breath he seemed to have been holding for hours, his shoulders slumping slightly as the adrenaline faded, leaving only exhaustion. He looked at the bodies of the mercenaries, then at the servers humming around them. "Burn it," Jae-hwa commanded, gesturing to the banks of hard drives. "Sir," D-Sung asked. "All of it. The data, the backups, the project files, everything that links the doctor to this place. Make it look like a rival corporate hit." D-Sung nodded and signaled his men, who began planting incendiary charges on the server racks. Jae-hwa turned to Amara. She was still trembling, the reality of their survival crashing down on her. He reached out, taking the tablet from her rigid fingers and tossing it onto the floor, where a soldier stomped on it, shattering the screen. "It's over," he said softly. "The police," Amara stammered, "the alarms." "My lawyers are already on the phone with the police commissioner," Jae-hwa said, a ghost of a smile touching his lips. "And the fire department will be delayed. Come, we are leaving." He didn't drag her this time. He offered his arm. Amara looked at it, then up at his face. The predator was back. The king had reclaimed his crown, yet the eyes looking at her were the same ones that had watched her in the freezer, vulnerable and human. She took his arm. They walked out of the building, not through the sewer or the loading dock, but through the front lobby. The security guards, overwhelmed and terrified by the sudden influx of syndicate soldiers, simply watched them pass. Outside, the rain had stopped. A convoy of black SUVs waited at the curb, engines idling. Amara stopped on the sidewalk, the cool night air feeling sweet in her lungs. "So," she said, pulling her arm away gently, "I guess this is where we part ways. You have your empire back and well, I'm technically a fugitive." Jae-hwa opened the door of the lead SUV. "Get in." "I'm not your hostage anymore, Jae-hwa." "No," he agreed, his gaze intense. "You are not, but you still have a piece of unauthorized hardware inside my body that needs to be surgically removed, and I believe you are the only doctor in this city qualified to do it." Amara hesitated, then sighed. "I'll need a sterile environment. My clinic is compromised." "I have a place," he said. "Get in." 2 weeks later. The penthouse occupied the top 3 floors of the Starlight Tower, overlooking the glittering expanse of Lake Michigan. It was a world away from the grime of the alleyway clinic. The air smelled of sea salt and expensive leather, not bleach and wet dog. Amara stripped off her surgical gloves, dropping them into the biohazard bin. The portable surgical suite Jae-hwa had installed in his guest room was state-of-the-art, better than anything she had used at the hospital. On the metal tray lay the chip, a tiny, blood-stained piece of metal that had almost leveled a city block. Jae-hwa sat on the edge of the medical bed, buttoning a fresh white shirt. The incision on his side was healing cleanly, a faint pink line that would eventually fade to white. He looked healthy, the power and vitality fully returned to his frame. "It's out," Amara said, holding up the vial containing the chip. "You're officially de-weaponized. No more tracking, no more bomb." "A pity," Jae-hwa mused, standing up and walking over to the floor-to-ceiling window. "I was growing fond of the danger." "I wasn't," Amara replied, packing her instruments. "Now that the job is done, I should go. I assume the wire transfer you promised is complete." Jae-hwa didn't turn around. "The $5 million is in an offshore account in your name. You can go to the Cayman Islands or Switzerland. You can buy a new identity, a new life. You can be anyone you want." Amara picked up her bag. This was the moment she had dreamed of for 3 years. Freedom. Vindication. A fresh start where no one knew she was the disgrace of the medical board. She looked at the door, then at Jae-hwa's broad back. But Jae-hwa continued, turning slowly to face her. There is another option. Oh. My organization has significant resources, Amara, but we lack specialized care. We lose good men because they cannot go to hospitals. I am building a private medical wing, off the books, completely secure with an unlimited budget for research and equipment. He took a step toward her. I need a chief of surgery, someone with steady hands, someone who doesn't flinch when a gun is pointed at her. Amara tightened her grip on her bag. You want me to work for the mob, officially. I want you to work for me, he corrected. He stopped right in front of her, close enough that she could feel the warmth of him, a different kind of heat than the fever that had nearly killed him. You saved my life, Amara, twice. You are the only person who has ever seen me weak and didn't try to stick a knife in my ribs. Instead, you put a bomb there to ensure I survived. That's a very romantic way of viewing extortion, she smiled dryly. Perhaps, he smirked. He reached into his pocket and pulled out the gold coin, the same one he had given her on their first night, the one she had returned to him in the server room. He held it out to her. I don't want a ghost doctor. I want a partner. Amara looked at the coin, then at the city lights sprawling below them. She thought about the beaches in the Caymans. They seemed lonely. She thought about the adrenaline of the heist, the trust that had formed in the freezing cold of the meat locker, the way he had stood in front of her when the soldiers aimed their rifles. She wasn't a hero. She wasn't a villain. She was a doctor who operated in the gray, and she had just found the man who ruled the dark. She reached out and took the coin, her fingers brushing against his palm. I'm going to need a bigger budget, she said, and weekends off. Jae-hwa closed his hand over hers, pulling her slightly closer. The look in his eyes promised trouble, danger, and a life far more interesting than safety. Everything is negotiable, doctor, he whispered. Welcome to the family. Amara smiled, dropped her bag to the floor, and for the first time in 3 years she didn't feel like she was running. She was exactly where she was supposed to be.